Keep that valve open.
Ma'am, the pressure. Come on, stop the water.
You don't give orders here.
This is private infrastructure.
He's a problem.
Who opened the valve?
I was told it was approved.
By the county? I didn't see county papers.
Don't answer him. This land answers to me now.
Move away from the control shed.
You had your chance to cooperate.
You opened a protected valve. Ma'am, maybe we should pause.
Do not stop because he showed up.
You are draining an $8 million reservoir and
You
abandoned.
expect us to believe somebody?
The pH is falling.
He's stalling.
The lower road is flooding.
Why is he so calm?
Because the file exists. The one your lawyer should have read.
Keep draining. I'm recording this. Turn that phone off on my property.
The alarm changed nothing that controls us.
I am. What is that?
The order you ignored. Ma'am, county car coming up the road.
A judge? No, keep working.
Don't touch another valve.
The water was still pouring out when Marcus Vale reached the reservoir gate. 40 years of drought planning, family sacrifice, and one hidden safety order were vanishing through a torn open valve while the HOA president smiled beside her clipboard. "This land answers to me now," she said. But why would a quiet black rancher own an $8 million reservoir no one in town was supposed to touch? Why did the county judge freeze when he saw the seal on Marcus's old file? And why did one neighbor's phone video turn a petty power grab into a $12 million courtroom reckoning? Stay until the final order is read. Marcus stepped out of the truck as if one wrong move might make the hillside give way. The roar from the reservoir swallowed the cicadas, the gravel under his boots, even the click of his door shutting. Below the gate, a fresh channel cut through red clay, and water tore through it in a brown rush. His boots sank half an inch. Wet clay climbed the leather like a stain. "Stop the valve," he said. Brenda Calloway turned from a folding table beside the fence. Her white blazer was clean. Behind her, 2 contractors stood by a portable pump. "Well," she said, smiling for the neighbors, "look who finally decided to participate." Marcus looked past her. The control shed stood inside the fence, chained shut. A warning sign tapped against the mesh. Above the spill line, the gauge jerked. Who opened it? Emergency maintenance access. The association voted. This reservoir is not in your association. It serves the community. It serves the land below it. A narrow-shouldered contractor cleared his throat. "Ma'am, he's asking about the main valve. Maybe we should—" "Elliot," Brenda cut in. "We are not taking instructions from a man who refused 3 certified letters." Marcus reached into his jacket. A worker stiffened. Marcus only drew out an old brass key on a dark leather cord, worn smooth by his father's thumb. "I'm going to the panel," Marcus said. "You can argue after the water is secure." Brenda laughed. "That key is charming. This property is under temporary HOA control." "No. One syllable won't change the order." Marcus stepped toward the gate. The clay pulled at his boot with a sucking sound. Elliot moved in front of him, not quite blocking him, not quite letting him through. "Sir," Elliot whispered, "I was told there was county clearance." "Did you see it?" Elliot's eyes flicked toward Brenda. "No." Brenda snapped the metal clip on her board. "You left an unsafe pit beside our neighborhood. We are correcting it before the Mercer Ridge presentation tonight. It holds reserves for farms you've never visited. It holds mosquitoes and liability." The water struck metal below the berm. Bang, bang, bang. An elderly woman in a blue sweater stood behind the mailbox line, one hand pressed to her mouth. Alice Montrose. Her phone shook in her other hand. "Mrs. Montrose," Brenda called, "please don't step into the work zone." "I'm not stepping anywhere," Alice said. "I'm watching." Marcus took one page from a waterproof sleeve in his truck. The wind tried to lift it. He pinned the corner with his thumb. "Read the top line." Brenda did not take it. "Send it to our attorney." "Read it." "I don't respond to theatrics." Elliot stared at the document. That seal. he murmured. Brenda's smile thinned. Continue the drawdown. Marcus looked at the shed, then at the water cutting deeper into the clay. He wiped mud from the key and slipped it back inside his jacket. You're making a record, he said. Good, Brenda replied. Then let the record show you refuse to cooperate. Marcus pulled out his father's dented field notebook. A strip of red thread marked one page. Before he could turn to it, the pump coughed, the gauge jumped hard, and a thin alarm began to whine from inside the locked shed. At 6:12 a.m. on Monday, the pump shed smelled of cold iron, dust, and bitter coffee. First light slid over the dry pasture and touched the photograph inside the cabinet. His father stood in it with one sleeve rolled up, one hand on the old intake pipe. You still checking on me? Marcus asked. Only the level gauge answered, ticking softly. He wrote the reading in the green ledger, 87.4%. Lower than last year. Better than fear. Then he touched the paper tag on the emergency key and shut the cabinet, leaving the photograph in the dark. His mother called before he reached the porch. You outside already? Lorraine Vale asked. Since before the birds. You say that like birds are lazy. Her laugh was thin. Don't forget my appointment Thursday. I won't. And don't let those gate people talk you into selling. Marcus looked toward Mercer Ridge, where sprinklers hissed over lawns too green for 6 dry weeks. Nobody's talking me into anything. Your father said that before every hard week. At 7:30, Alice Montrose came through the side path with peach preserves and a folded envelope. 68, silver hair under a straw hat, she had known the Reservoir before the subdivision had a name. Found this in my mailbox, she said. Morning stopped being polite when they put stamps on threats. The envelope bore the HOA crest. Notice of beautification review. Mandatory access requested. Failure to comply may result in legal remedies. They can't do that, can they? Alice asked. They can request. They can't command. They had a meeting last night. Brenda said the Reservoir is an eyesore, said it affects property values. Marcus folded the letter along its crease. Wind moved over the water in dull bands. My father built it when their property values were still tobacco dirt. Alice set the preserves on the rail. I remember trucks lined up during the drought. Your daddy wouldn't take a dime. He took records. What? Records last longer. Inside the kitchen, Marcus placed the HOA letter beside the ledger and turned Alice's coffee cup so the handle faced her. She held cups with both hands now. Lorraine know? She asked. She needs her blood pressure down before Thursday. She needs the truth. She'll get it when truth can help. Alice's eyes moved to the county map above the sink. East Vale storage basin. Private. Protected. His father's handwriting. At noon, heat pressed against the metal roof. Marcus walked the east bank with a shovel, knocking weeds away from the spill markers. Mud had cracked into plates near the shallow end. He brushed grit from a brass marker stamped with his father's initials. The touch brought back a voice. Water doesn't belong to pride, son. It belongs to the people who'll need it before they know they do. At 3:05, a black SUV slowed near the locked service gate. The driver did not get out. A man in a pale shirt took 2 pictures through the windshield. Marcus stood. The SUV rolled back toward Mercer Ridge. That evening, Marcus placed the old brass key on the kitchen table beside the HOA letter. The house smelled of beans, cedar, and rain that had not arrived. On the hill, the subdivision lights came on one by one, neat as candles at a vigil. By 7:05 p.m., the Mercer Ridge clubhouse smelled of lemon polish, coffee, and new carpet. Brenda Calloway stood beneath the brass chandelier with a remote in her hand, smiling as if the room had agreed. On the screen, the reservoir appeared as a pale blue stain beside the subdivision map. "Tonight," she said, "we discuss a long-delayed improvement." Nina Park, the HOA accountant, sat at the side table with a laptop open and a pen behind one ear. 32, small-framed, with round glasses, she kept pushing them up whenever Brenda said liability. Grant Mercer leaned near the drawings, offering a warm half-smile. Brenda clicked. The next slide showed walking trails and a decorative pond where Marcus's reservoir should have been. Tom Bradish raised one hand. "Isn't that Vale land?" Brenda's smile held. "A portion touches community-adjacent access." "That's not an answer," someone whispered. Grant stepped forward. "The question is usefulness. Right now, that structure is unattractive and out of step with what this community is becoming." Tom lowered his hand. "I asked if it was his." "The association has options," Brenda said. At the back, a woman murmured, "He never comes to meetings." "He can't," Tom said. "He doesn't live inside the HOA." Brenda clicked again. A red outline appeared around the reservoir gate. "Mr. Vale refused access. We must protect residents from stagnant runoff." Grant nodded. "My firm will donate support. No cost." No cost. Several shoulders eased. Nina opened a folder labeled Mercer Ridge Enhancement Fund. One contribution sat on the first page, large enough that she looked twice. The donor line matched Grant's invoices. "Are we voting tonight?" Tom asked. "Only on authorization to pursue emergency review." "What does pursue mean?" Brenda's mouth tightened. "It means we stop letting one man's stubbornness hold back 97 families." A spoon clicked inside a paper cup. Nina heard herself speak. "Do we have the full easement file?" The room turned. Brenda's voice softened too much. "We have what we need. If there is protected infrastructure language—" "Nina, minutes, please. Not speculation." Heat climbed Nina's neck. She wrote, "Board discussed access concerns." Tom pushed himself up. "I remember the drought. That water served half this county." "This is not 2006, Brenda replied. "No, but water still runs downhill." Outside, sprinklers ticked across the lawn. Brenda set down the remote. "All in favor of authorizing emergency access review?" Hands rose in uneven waves, some fast, some late, some only halfway. Nina did not vote. But she saw Alice Montrose outside the glass doors, looking in from the walkway, her face pale under the porch light. Alice had not been invited. Grant noticed, too. He crossed the room and pulled the blinds closed. The room brightened, sealed from the dark. "Motion carries," Brenda said. Nina's laptop chimed. A scanned map had arrived from the archive service. At the bottom corner, under a brown water stain, was a line missing from every packet. Emergency access reserved for county response only. Nina looked toward Brenda, then toward the closed blinds. On the other side of them, Alice's shadow remained after the meeting moved on. At 8:18 the next morning, the certified envelope lay on Marcus's porch rail, damp from mist. He checked the reservoir gauge before he opened it. The water was steady. Gray clouds pressed over the pasture, and the air smelled of wet leaves and iron. Mandatory access notice. Beautification and safety inspection. Failure to provide entry may result in enforcement action. Marcus read it twice because it had his father's parcel number wrong. Lorraine stood in the doorway, robe tied crooked. "That from the gate people?" "Yes." "Does it say please?" "No." "Then I already dislike it." He folded the letter beside the green ledger. "I'm going to their office." Take a lawyer. Not yet. Marcus, I'm taking paper. By 10:04, he parked outside the HOA management office, a brick building that smelled of copier heat and candles. Brenda sat with 2 board members. Nina Park looked up. Mr. Vale, Brenda said, do you have an appointment? You sent a notice. We sent several. You sent demands to land you don't govern. A board member laughed. Marcus set a canvas document case on the table. The zipper rasped through the room. These are the recorded deeds, Marcus said. County plats, emergency access language, engineering restrictions, the 2006 drought storage agreement. Brenda lifted one page by the corner and laid it on the table's edge. We are not litigating history in our conference room. It isn't history if you're trying to open the gate. No one said that. Nina swallowed. Last night's motion had said emergency review. Brenda had marked the invoice urgent. Marcus opened a second folder. Your notice cites parcel 14-B. The reservoir sits on 14-A, 14-C, and easement V-7. That mistake invalidates your demand. Brenda smiled. This is exactly the obstruction I described. A drop of coffee slid from a cup and formed a brown ring around the corner of Marcus's oldest page. It spread into the paper fibers. Nina stood. I'll get a napkin. Sit, Brenda said. Marcus pressed 2 fingers beside the stain and lifted the document before it reached the blue seal. The movement was careful, and that made the room smaller. You don't have to like me, he said. You do have to read. Brenda's face hardened. Mercer Ridge has families, standards, drainage concerns. Downstream farms have water rights. Then let a judge tell us that. Marcus gathered only the stained page, leaving the rest spread open. If you interfere with that reservoir, you will be responsible for more than landscaping. Was that a threat? No, it was the sentence your attorney should have written. For the first time, Nina saw the seal clearly. U.S. Office of Water Resilience. Beneath it, in faded ink, was Marcus's father's signature and another name from County Emergency Minutes. Her pen slipped from her hand and struck the floor. Nina, Brenda said. Nina bent to pick it up, but her eyes stayed on the page. Marcus zipped the case and walked out. The vanilla candle near reception had burned to a black wick, sending up a sour thread of smoke. Behind him, Brenda said, Prepare the contractor packet. Nina did not answer until his truck had pulled away. Then she enlarged the archive seal until the words filled the glass. By 4:46 p.m., the archive room light flickered over boxes marked Pool Bids and Old Maps. The air smelled of dust, toner, and lemon cleaner. Brenda stood over a yellowed survey with one polished nail pressed to a thin line crossing Vale property. There, emergency access. Nina bent closer. It says county response only. It says access. The rest matters. Brenda slid the map into a sleeve. The rest is old language. Nina thought of the seal on Marcus's document. If this is protected infrastructure, it is a basin with a fence around it. Grant Mercer arrived without knocking, carrying 2 coffees and a folder. Tell me we found a path. Brenda held up the sleeve. More than that. He read quickly. Emergency access supports inspection. Not modification, Nina said. Inspection may require a temporary release. If it has been neglected, the safest evidence is a controlled drawdown. Nina's pen stopped. That sounds like deciding the result before inspecting. Brenda's chair scraped. It sounds like protecting residents. Grant opened drawings of a clubhouse terrace. Investors arrive Friday. They need progress. And Marcus? Nina asked. He had chances to cooperate, Brenda said. At 6:12, they met Elliot Reed at the Eastern Service Road. The sun had slipped behind the pines, leaving the gravel blue and cold. A chain crossed the emergency gate. On it hung a rusted lock, swollen at the seam, and a warning sign clicked in the wind. Private water infrastructure. Authorized county or owner access only. Elliot read it twice. 37, narrow-shouldered, with red dust in his work boots, he kept one thumb hooked under his tool belt. "This isn't a drainage ditch," he said. "It has pressure controls, spill markers, old federal tags." Grant stepped closer. "We need supervised access and a limited release." "Do you have county clearance?" Brenda handed him authorization on HOA letterhead. Elliot did not take it. "This is from you." "I am president of the association." The sign says county or owner. "The association's counsel will handle interpretation." Nina stood near the SUV, cold seeping through her flats. Frogs started near the cattails. Farther away, sprinklers hissed over Mercer Ridge lawns. One side of the fence used water for shine. The other side was being called a problem. Elliot finally took the paper. "I'll need a written work order." Grant already had one. Brenda signed it on the SUV hood. Under scope of work, someone had typed, "Temporary valve test and documented drawdown." "How temporary?" Nina asked. Grant capped the pen. "Long enough." At 7:03, Brenda sent an email to the board. "Emergency inspection scheduled. Do not engage with Mr. Vale directly." Nina saw the draft before it vanished. No grant. No warning sign. No county response only. As they packed up, Elliot brushed the rusted lock with 2 fingers, and flakes fell into red clay. "When?" he asked. "Thursday morning," Brenda said, looking toward Marcus's house. "He'll be away." Nina lifted her head. "How do you know that?" Brenda opened the SUV door. "Because his mother told Alice Montrose at church. People talk." The door shut. The lock clicked once in the wind, small and dry, as if it had tried to answer. Thursday came in flat and gray, clouds hanging over Red Clay County like a lid. At 6:40 a.m., Marcus helped Lorraine into the truck. She wore her blue church coat, and the air smelled of dust. "You checked the gauge?" she asked. "Before sunrise." "And the gate?" "Locked." "And the people with the pretty signs?" "Still noisy." Lorraine touched the seatbelt twice. "Your father answered like that when trouble had put on shoes." Marcus looked toward the Reservoir Road, then started the engine. By 8:17, the first white utility truck rolled past Alice Montrose's kitchen window. A mug slipped in her wet fingers and clinked against the sink. A second truck followed, then Brenda's SUV. "You lost?" Alice called. Elliot Reed got out near the emergency gate. "Morning, ma'am." Brenda stepped out with her clipboard. "Mrs. Montrose, this is approved work. Stay on property." "That gate isn't yours." "It is an access point. For the county. We are preventing a hazard," Brenda said. Grant Mercer stood by the road, phone to his ear. "Where is Marcus?" "Unavailable." Alice went inside and picked up her phone. Her thumb missed the camera icon twice. When the screen opened, it showed the sink, the yellow sponge, her breath fogging the glass. She raised it toward the window. The picture shook so hard the gate kept sliding out of view. Across the lane, Tom Bradish opened his blinds 2 inches. "Is that legal?" his wife whispered. Tom saw Brenda point at the chain. He saw Elliot read the sign again. Then he closed the blinds. Outside, metal scraped. The chain dropped onto red clay with a dull slap. At 8:31, Elliot tried a temporary lockbox. Nothing clicked. Grant lowered his phone. "We don't need the shed for a visual inspection." Brenda's voice sharpened. The valve test is part of the inspection. A controlled release without owner confirmation is not standard, Elliot said. Neither is letting a neglected basin threaten a residential community. It isn't neglected. Everyone turned. Alice stood on her porch, phone raised in both hands. Her sleeves hung past her wrists. Brenda stepped closer. Recording contractors may expose you to liability. I'm recording my view. You are interfering. I'm standing where I plant tomatoes. The porch boards creaked. Her phone trembled, and the image dipped from Brenda's face to the muddy ruts behind the SUV. Elliot rubbed his palms on his jeans. I want it noted I requested county confirmation. Grant smiled. Noted. No. Written. Brenda tore a sheet from her pad and wrote one sentence. She pressed so hard the pen nearly cut through. Then she signed it. Elliot read it, then walked to the secondary release housing. A low mechanical groan rose from behind the shed. Birds lifted out of the reeds in a sudden gray scatter. Alice's phone jerked toward the sound. The frame blurred. Water appeared first as a dark line, then as a rolling sheet pushing into the old channel. From behind, closed blinds, 3 houses watched without faces. At 9:06, Marcus's call went straight to Alice's voicemail. The clinic had no signal in the lower hallway. She kept filming until her wrist hurt and the water began carrying grass, leaves, and one white warning tag downstream. At 10:28 a.m., Marcus came over the rise and saw the reservoir before he saw the trucks. The water line had fallen so far the bank looked wounded. A pale stripe circled the stones where water had rested that morning, white against wet red clay. Below it, mud shone in ribs. The open channel roared like traffic. Lorraine was still at the clinic. He had left her with a nurse after Alice's second voicemail. They opened it, Marcus. They opened it. He stopped outside the emergency gate. The chain lay in the mud. Who cut this? He asked. Brenda turned from the temporary barrier. Several Mercer Ridge residents stood behind her in golf jackets. No one cut anything, she said. We accessed it. With whose authority? With the association's emergency authorization. Marcus looked at Elliot. The contractor's face had gone gray around the mouth. I asked for county clearance, Elliot said. Brenda snapped. Elliot! Marcus stepped toward the control shed. Mud pulled at his boots, and cold water soaked his jeans. Close the release. Do not touch that gate, Brenda said. This is active infrastructure. This is a neglected pond beside our homes. Alice came down her porch steps, phone still in hand. It wasn't neglected at dawn. Brenda lifted her chin toward the watching residents. Mrs. Montrose is confused. She has been emotionally attached to the old Vale property for years. Alice's thumb tightened around the phone. I know what I saw. Grant Mercer arrived from the lower slope, polished shoes splashed brown. Mr. Vale, this would have been easier if you had cooperated. Marcus did not look at him. His eyes stayed on the white scar around the reservoir. How many inches per hour? Elliot swallowed. Too many. Answer him if you know, Brenda said. Not if you're guessing. He knows, Marcus said. Grant folded his sunglasses. You're creating drama for an audience. Marcus finally turned. You opened a release without the owner, without county response, and without downstream notice. Brenda laughed once, short and bright. Owner, there it is again. The residents shifted. Someone whispered, Does he own it? Brenda raised her voice. Mr. Vale owns land outside our community. He does not own the right to endanger us. A landscaper looked at the mud on Marcus's boots, then at Brenda's clean blazer, and lowered his eyes. Marcus took the brass key from inside his jacket. Water dripped from his sleeve onto it. "I'm going to the panel," he said. Grant stepped into his path. "The court will decide. The water won't wait for court. Neither will liability." Marcus stopped inches away, not touching him. The air smelled of churned clay and hot pump oil. The alarm inside the shed whined, fell silent, then started again. Alice called, "Marcus, I sent the video." Brenda spun toward her. "To whom?" Alice blinked. "Someone who answers calls." Brenda's smile slipped. Marcus moved around Grant. Elliot did not block him this time, but when Marcus reached the fence, he saw a new padlock on the control shed, silver, hanging beneath his father's rusted hasp. He held up the old brass key. It would not fit. Behind him, the water kept dropping, exposing more of the white line everyone could see. The silver padlock was new, bright, and wrong. Marcus held his father's brass key against it, letting the neighbors see the teeth did not match. Inside the control shed, the alarm whined, stopped, then began again, thinner than before. Brenda folded her arms. "The work area has been secured. You locked me out of my own panel. We locked out interference." Water hammered below the berm, rolling through the red clay and up through Marcus's boots. He lifted the canvas document case from his truck. Alice stood by the mailbox with her phone pressed to her chest. "Keep that video safe," Marcus said. "I sent it to Jonah," she whispered, "and to myself." Grant checked his watch. "Mr. Vale, we filed for clarification. A judge can hear it this afternoon. Until then, no one touches the equipment." Marcus unzipped the case on his hood. Wind lifted the top pages, and he pinned them with a wrench. Original deed, recorded easement, county drought plan, engineering restrictions, downstream list. Letter from my father to the county commission. Brenda glanced at the stack. Family souvenirs don't override public safety. Even the men by the pump looked down. Marcus's thumb found the folded letter before he meant it to. The paper had been opened so often the crease had gone white. He smoothed it from the center to the edge, flattening his father's handwriting while the reservoir kept draining behind him. "Read page 4, he said. "I have counsel for that." "Read it before more water leaves." Brenda turned to Elliot. "Continue monitoring the drawdown." Elliot stayed where he was. "Ma'am, I need to check that alarm." "It is an alarm. It alarms." "It's a pressure imbalance warning." Grant touched Elliot's shoulder. "We are minutes from guidance." "You were hours from damage before you called a judge," Marcus said. Nina Park's gray sedan rolled in behind Brenda's SUV. She got out with her tablet hugged to her ribs, glasses fogging. "What damage?" she asked. Marcus lifted page 4. Unauthorized release may reduce emergency reserves for farms, fire storage, and medical supply operations below the Valley Road. "May I see that?" Nina said. Brenda's head snapped toward her. "No." Marcus laid the page on the hood where anyone could read it. "You don't need permission to look." For 2 seconds the alarm stopped. The gap made the rushing water sound larger. Then the whine returned, sharper, needling the air. Nina stepped closer. Brenda argued with Elliot about the warning. Grant smiled at the residents like this was a ribbon cutting with bad weather. Nina lowered her tablet. Her phone came up behind it. The camera made no sound, but a tiny flash blinked on the wet truck paint. Alice saw it. Marcus saw it. Brenda snatched the page from the hood. "Take your memorial papers and wait for the hearing." Marcus accepted it with 2 fingers. The corner had picked up grit. He brushed it away before sliding it beside his father's letter. Grant raised his voice. "No one is erasing anyone's family history. We simply need lawful clarity." Marcus zipped the case. "Then get your clarity fast," he said. Below the spillway, the service road began to darken. Not from shade, from water seeping up through packed red clay. The first upload failed at 11:14 a.m. Alice sat at her kitchen table, elbows beside a cup of tea. Her phone lay flat on a dish towel because her hands would not keep still. On the screen, the blue bar stopped at 92%, blinked once, and vanished. "No, no, no," she whispered. Outside, the reservoir roared beyond the pecan trees. Alice wiped her thumb on her sweater and tried again. The video opened with the yellow sponge in her sink, then the trucks, then the chain falling into mud. She trimmed nothing. She wrote one line to her nephew, Jonah Lee, 35, a county reporter. "Please tell me if this is legal." Across the road, Nina Park sat in her sedan with the engine off. Her tablet showed the page Marcus had laid on his truck hood. Unauthorized release may reduce emergency reserves. Nina opened the HOA accounting folder, then the enhancement fund. Grant Mercer's company appeared as a community design partner. 2 weeks later, a payment had moved into a board consulting account. She took a screenshot, then another. A knock struck her window. Brenda stood outside, smiling without warmth. "Everything all right?" "I'm reconciling expenses." "Now?" "You asked me to keep records." "I asked you to keep minutes." Nina's fingers found the lock button. "Those are records." Brenda leaned closer. "Be careful about confusing loyalty with curiosity." Nina looked past her. Marcus stood near the service road, phone to one ear, watching water seep through the clay. Alice's phone chimed. Upload complete. The blue bar sat full for 1 perfect second. Then Jonah's reply appeared. "Calling now." She answered before the first ring finished. "Aunt Alice? Where are you?" "At home. They opened the Vale Reservoir." "Who is they?" "The HOA Brenda. That builder man. Marcus tried to stop them." "Is anyone hurt?" "No, but the water is going, Jonah." "Send me the location pin. Keep recording from your property." "You think it matters?" A chair scraped on his end. "I think somebody didn't expect video." At the fence, Marcus finally reached a signal. When Dr. Ruth Sanders answered, office noise sat behind her voice. "Marcus Vale," she said. "I knew this number would bring trouble. I need my father's case number." The noise behind her stopped. "Why?" "They opened the reservoir." Keys started clicking. "Who authorized that?" "HOA." "That basin isn't theirs." "I know." "No, Marcus. I mean, it was never only yours." The alarm in the shed rose again, thin as a kettle. Ruth said, "East Vale Storage Basin, Drought Resilience File, Federal Local Emergency Designation, 2006. "Hold on." Grant walked toward him from the lower road. "Mr. Vale, counsel has advised all parties to wait for the hearing." Marcus turned his back, shielding the phone from the wind. "Case number WR-06-7814, Ruth said. "Your father signed the continuity addendum. If they are releasing water without county command, document everything." "It's documented." "Not enough. Ask County Emergency Management for Harlan Price." Marcus looked at the old white line exposed around the reservoir. "Send me the file." "I already am." On Alice's table, Jonah's second message arrived with a sound like a small bell. "Do not delete the original." At 11:27 a.m., Ruth Sanders's email landed on Marcus's phone, a buzz swallowed by the spillway roar. He set the phone on the truck hood and tapped speaker. Wind dragged grit across the glass. Alice filmed from the mailbox line. Nina stood by her sedan. "Read the subject line," Ruth said. "WR-06-7814. East Vale storage basin. Open the addendum. The file loaded in pieces, a county seal, a faded federal stamp, then his father's name beneath a blue ink signature. Ruth's voice softened. Your father signed for more than family storage. During the drought, that basin became a recognized reserve. Lowland Farms, tanker refill access, and the medical route are listed. Brenda laughed. This is theatrical. Ruth heard her. Who is that? The person draining it, Marcus said. Then let her hear me. Ruth's voice sharpened through the speaker. Any release below reserve threshold without owner consent and county order may trigger civil liability and emergency intervention. Grant stepped closer. And you are? Dr. Ruth Sanders, Water Resilience Review Board, retired. Elliot checked the gauge. We're below 82 and dropping. No one spoke over the water. A white county sedan rolled through the open gate. The man who stepped out was 58, tall and narrow, with silver hair cut close. He stopped at the broken chain in the mud before looking up. Harlan Price, he said, temporary court representative. Brenda walked to him with her clipboard raised. The association has full documentation. He did not take it. Who opened the release? A licensed contractor performed a controlled inspection. Harlan turned to Elliot. I opened it under written HOA order, Elliot said. I requested county confirmation. I did not receive it. Grant cut in. A hearing is scheduled. Water is moving now, Harlan said. Premature ended when the valve opened. Marcus picked up the phone. Dr. Sanders can confirm the designation. Harlan nodded. Put her on. Marcus held the phone between them. For the first time that day, his shoulders lowered. One breath left him, slow in the cooling air. Ruth gave the case number, threshold, and beneficiary list. Harlan wrote each line in black ink. Brenda leaned toward Grant. This doesn't decide ownership. No, Harlan said. But it decides whether anyone had business opening a valve before court reviewed the papers. Alice's phone beeped. Low battery. Marcus took a charging cable from his truck and handed it to her. Keep it running. Harlan walked to the control shed. The silver padlock caught the cloudy light. Whose lock? Temporary site safety, Brenda said. Whose lock? Grant answered. Mine. Harlan wrote that down too. The alarm rose again, thin and steady. Harlan held up one hand until even Brenda stopped talking. Mr. Vale, do you have the original key? Marcus lifted the old brass key from its leather cord. Harlan looked at the lock, then at the exposed white line around the basin. Then someone will remove the wrong lock while I call the judge. Brenda's face tightened. On what authority? Harlan opened his phone and stared at water seeping through the lower road. On the authority of what is still leaving this property while you ask. At 2:03 p.m., the courtroom smelled of varnished wood, old paper, and rain carried in on damp coats. Marcus sat with his canvas case between his boots. Red clay had dried along the seams. Celia Ramos, 44, calm in a dark suit, slid a legal pad toward him. Speak only when asked. Let the documents do the walking. Marcus nodded once. Across the aisle, Brenda arranged folders by color. Grant Mercer set renderings on an easel, a terrace, paths, a blue pond where the basin had been. Nina Park kept her tablet flat on her knees. All rise. Judge Everett Hale entered slowly, silver brows lowered. When he sat, Marcus could hear the wall clock click. This is an emergency petition regarding water release at East Vale, the judge said. Is the valve closed? Harlan Price stood. Yes, Your Honor. I observed an unauthorized lock on the owner's shed and saturation along the lower road. Brenda's attorney rose. The association acted under maintenance concerns. Then we'll learn what emergency existed. Grant went first, voice smooth. He described safety, property values, families near an unmanaged basin. He tapped the rendering. Our proposal turns a hazard into shared space. Celia stood. That land is not community space. She placed the old plat under the document camera. The map appeared with stains, handwritten notes, and a boundary line around the reservoir. Brenda whispered, "It's old." Celia did not turn. "Old is not invalid." The judge leaned forward. Zoom the lower right corner. A faded seal filled the monitor. Judge Hale removed his glasses. No one moved. "Where did you obtain this?" he asked. "Family records and archive backup," Celia said. The judge reached for the copy. "I remember this seal." Grant's smile thinned. "Your Honor, memory is not a ruling." "No," Hale said. "It is a reason to read carefully." He held the page beneath his desk lamp. Yellow light pooled over the ink. Marcus saw his father's signature, then the second signature from county emergency minutes. His hand stayed folded. Rain began tapping the high windows. "Was your father Samuel Vale?" Hale asked. "Yes, Your Honor." "He brought water data here during the drought. In a shoebox." A rustle moved through the benches. Nina lifted her tablet a fraction. Celia placed the addendum beside the plat. "The basin supports downstream farms, tanker access, and the county medical route. Unauthorized release endangers all three." Brenda's attorney said, "The association was unaware of any active designation." Judge Hale turned one page. "Were you aware the gate sign limited access to county response or owner authorization?" Brenda stood too quickly. Her chair legs scraped. "We believed the easement allowed inspection." "Did it allow opening a valve?" Her mouth opened, then closed. Grant stepped in. A contractor made a technical call. Elliot Reed stared at his boots. The judge marked something with a pencil. "Temporary order. Control remains with Mr. Vale. No HOA or Mercer work pending full hearing. All records, messages, invoices, and video are preserved." His gavel came down once. Marcus did not look at Brenda. He picked up his father's folder. The judge was still studying the signature under the lamp. At 9:18 the next morning, the hearing began with the valve closed, but the smell of wet clay seemed to follow Marcus into court. His boots were clean, except for a thin line of red clay in one seam. Celia Ramos placed 3 folders on the table. "We start with the work order." Brenda sat rigid across the aisle. Grant kept both hands over a leather portfolio. Elliot Reed waited near the witness rail, shoulders hunched. Judge Hale looked over his glasses. "Mr. Reed, you are still under oath." "Yes, Your Honor." Celia held up one page. "Did you warn Mrs. Calloway that the sign limited access to county response or owner authorization?" Elliot rubbed his thumb over one knuckle. "I did." "Did you ask for county confirmation?" "Yes." "Did you receive it?" "No, ma'am." "Did you say so before opening the release?" "I told them I was uncomfortable without county clearance." "And then?" Brenda's pen stopped moving. "Mrs. Calloway wrote an order," Elliot said. "Mr. Mercer provided the scope language, temporary valve test, and documented drawdown. Was there a technical need to draw down that much water?" Elliot looked toward Marcus, then away. "No." The room let out one low breath. Nina Park rose before anyone called her. Her glasses sat crooked, and a small black flash drive rested in her palm. "Your Honor," she said, voice barely above the rain tapping the windows. "I have records." Brenda turned. "Nina." Nina walked to the clerk's table slowly. When she set the flash drive down, She did it with both hands. It contains the enhancement fund ledger, emails about Friday's investor presentation, and payments from Mr. Mercer's company to a board consulting account. Grant stood halfway. That is misleading. Judge Hale pointed one finger at him. Sit. Nina's mouth trembled once. I should have brought it sooner. Brenda whispered. You don't understand what you're doing. Nina finally turned to her. I think I do. The clerk loaded the file. Numbers appeared first, then messages. Grant's name, Brenda's initials, phrases like visual progress, basin obstacle, before presentation. Marcus watched without moving. His father's folder lay closed beneath his hand. Then Alice Montrose was called. She walked to the witness chair in a blue sweater, phone in a plastic evidence sleeve. I'm not good with these things, she told the clerk. That's all right, the clerk said. You only had to keep it. The video began with Alice's sink, a yellow sponge, and her breath catching near the microphone. The courtroom saw the trucks roll in. The chain fell. Elliot asked for county confirmation. Brenda's voice cut through the speaker. We are preventing a hazard. Then came Marcus's return, his quiet request. Brenda's laugh. Your neglected pit is finally becoming useful. No one looked at the screen after that. They looked at Marcus. He kept his eyes on the table. When the video ended, Judge Hale removed his glasses and folded them with care. Mrs. Calloway, he said, this court will now examine whether this was error, negligence, or deliberate disregard. Brenda's pen slipped from her fingers and rolled under the table, tapping once against Marcus's shoe before stopping there. The pen stopped against Marcus's boot. Celia picked it up, set it on Brenda's table, and returned to her file. Judge Hale let the clock tick 3 times. Emergency assessment. Harlan Price stood. Valve closed at 12:41 yesterday. Lower road saturated. Refill, bank stabilization, and downstream notice are required. How much loss? Harlan gave the number. The benches stirred. Grant muttered, inflated. Judge Hale looked over his glasses. The next voice from your table will be sworn. Celia submitted photographs. The white scar around the reservoir, broken chain, silver padlock, Alice's still of Brenda signing on the SUV hood. Brenda stared at her hand in the picture. We relied on counsel. Which counsel authorized opening the valve before review? Hale asked. Her attorney touched his papers. The association believed. I asked who authorized it. No one answered. Drops from the morning inspection had dried on Marcus's cuff, leaving brown rings. When the judge tapped the gavel, it sounded softer than those drops falling from his sleeve. Hale read from the order. East Vale Storage Basin is private property, protected by deed, easement limit, and 2006 continuity addendum. HOA authority does not attach by proximity, preference, or ambition. Alice covered her mouth. Nina stared at her knees. The injunction is permanent pending restoration, control of gates, locks, valves, access codes, and monitoring equipment returns immediately to Marcus Vale. Marcus did not smile. Mercer Ridge Development is restrained from work, marketing, grading, or presentation involving the basin. Materials showing that water feature are withdrawn. Grant stood. That will collapse a lawful project. Hale lifted his eyes. It appears your project was standing on someone else's water. Grant sat. Celia said, Damages, Your Honor. Hale turned the page. Based on emergency loss, restoration costs, downstream risk, attempted conversion of protected infrastructure, and disregard, this court enters preliminary damages and sanctions of $12 million, subject to final accounting. Personal liability review will proceed. The room folded inward. Tom Bradish removed his cap. Brenda looked at the table as if the wood grain had become a road out. 12 million? She whispered. Hale heard her. You had more than one chance to stop at a gate. Marcus closed his father's folder. Celia touched his elbow. You can breathe. I am. Mr. Vale, the judge said, what immediate relief do you request? Marcus rose. Close every unauthorized access point. Inspect the lower farms today. Notify the fire tanker station and county clinic that reserve levels were compromised. Then start the refill plan. Hale nodded. Anything further? Marcus looked once at Brenda, then Grant. No victory speech. The gavel came down. So ordered. Outside, rain had stopped. Reporters waited under the awning, but Marcus walked past them. Air smelled clean and raw. Brenda stood on the steps, hugging an empty clipboard to her chest. Harlan opened the county car door. We'll need a public restoration meeting. Marcus looked toward the gray road back to the basin. Then make it public enough that nobody can pretend they didn't know. By 6:30 p.m., the hall had filled with people who once watched the reservoir from behind blinds. A new map hung on the front wall. Black letters sat over the blue shape. East Vale Storage Basin, protected private water infrastructure. Someone had pinned it too high, so the bottom edge curled toward the room. Marcus stood near the aisle with Lorraine. She had refused the front row. I'm not sitting where they can study my face, she said. You want the back? I want the truth to travel farther than my knees. At the podium, Diane Whitmore tapped the microphone. Her silver braid lay over one shoulder. This meeting is recorded, she said. Every comment becomes part of the restoration plan. Brenda sat 2 rows from the front without her blazer. Grant Mercer was absent. His attorney kept checking his phone. Harlan Price opened a folder. Effective immediately, HOA claims over water infrastructure outside recorded boundaries are suspended. No work order may touch gates, valves, or service roads without owner consent and verification. A resident raised his hand. Even for safety? Diane turned to him. Especially for safety. Nina Park stood by a side table with printed copies. Her badge read, County Transparency Office. When Alice approached, Nina handed her a packet. I should have listened sooner, Nina said. Alice looked at it. Sooner is gone. You're here now. The room quieted when Brenda rose. Her chair squealed against the floor. For a moment she faced the map, the name reflected in her glasses. I resign as president of Mercer Ridge HOA, she said. The board will appoint an interim officer under county oversight. Someone whispered, That's it? Brenda gripped the chair back. I am complying with the liability review. No apology came. Marcus did not wait for it. Diane read the reforms. Legal review of boundary claims, infrastructure registry, contractor refusal protections, emergency stop authority, board training, and a hotline. Tom Bradish lifted his cap from his lap. What about people who saw trucks and did nothing? The question sat heavier than the microphone. Diane said, There is no ordinance for courage. Tom nodded once. Marcus finally stood. The room turned so quickly, papers rustled. I'm asking that the registry cover small landowners first, he said. Not just large systems. A man with a farm pond. A widow with a well road. Anybody aboard can outtalk. Lorraine's fingers found his sleeve. Harlan wrote it down. Priority tier for vulnerable owners. Plain notices too, Marcus added. Not legal fog. Diane looked at him. You want review before adoption? No. I want the people most likely to be ignored to read it before adoption." For the first time all evening, the room did not murmur. It listened. After the vote, residents lined up for inspection rosters. Alice wrote slowly, pressing hard enough to dent the page. Nina taped the new map flat. The curled edge stopped moving. Outside, the evening smelled of damp pavement and mown grass. Marcus helped Lorraine down the steps. Behind them, through the glass doors, the map caught the hall lights. The reservoir had its right name now, but Marcus noticed an empty space where the county still needed to add one more line. By early December, the reservoir had stopped sounding like a wound. Mist lifted from the water at 6:20 a.m., while Marcus stood beside the pump shed with Lorraine's hand tucked through his arm. The new plaque was no larger than a notebook, but the letters were clean. Samuel Vale, whose records kept water for those who had not yet asked. Lorraine touched the edge. He would have complained about the cost. He would have checked the bolts first, Marcus said. The brass key hung from its old leather cord in his palm. For weeks it had meant wrong locks and doors. People tried to close over his name. Now it opened the restored panel. The gauge clicked steady at 91%. Across the valley, trucks filled from the county access point under a new sign: Owner and County Verified Access Only. A firefighter scanned a code, waited for the green light, and signed the log before turning a valve. At the county office, Harlan Price presented the public report. The HOA had exceeded its authority. Mercer Ridge Development misrepresented materials. Contractor refusal rules had been unclear. Emergency records had been easy to bury in boxes. Brenda Calloway resigned before the final hearing. The liability review barred her from HOA leadership for 5 years and required training before board service. Grant Mercer's basin project was canceled, permits suspended pending state review, and his company entered an audit. Elliot Reed kept his license after cooperating and joined contractor training on refusing unlawful orders. Nina Park sat 2 rows back, taking notes for the transparency office. When Harlan read her name in the acknowledgments, she lowered her head. Alice Montrose sat nearby. Her video, preserved from the original file, became Exhibit A and then a training clip. After the report, Tom Bradish waited near the vending machine. "Marcus," he said, cap twisting in his hands. "I saw the trucks that morning." "I know." "I closed my blinds." Marcus did not answer quickly. The machine hummed between them. Tom swallowed. "I'm on the volunteer inspection roster now." Marcus looked at the clipboard under his arm. "Then keep them open." In January, the first oversight meeting drew farmers, HOA residents, 2 clinic nurses, and a widow with a folder about a well road nobody had listened to for 12 years. The new rule required plain language notices before any board could claim access outside its boundary. It gave contractors a hotline, landowners a registry, and the county judge a same-day stop process when water, power, or medical routes were at risk. Marcus spoke only once. "Make the form short. People ask for help after they're tired." That spring, rain returned in slow sheets. Grass grew over the scarred service road. The white line around the bank faded until only Marcus knew where to look. One evening, he brought Lorraine to the shore. Alice had left peach preserves on the porch. Nina mailed the final registry, with East Vale storage basin printed correctly on the first page. Marcus placed the green ledger back in the cabinet beside his father's photograph. Lorraine watched the reflection settle around the plaque. "You all right?" Marcus closed the cabinet gently. "Not all the way." She nodded. "Good. All the way forgets too much." They stood until the light thinned behind the pines. The water held the sky without noise. If this story reminded you of a moment when someone ignored the truth because they thought power was enough, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us about a time when dignity, records, or one brave witness changed what happened next. Share this story with someone who believes quiet strength still matters, especially when systems fail ordinary people. And subscribe for more stories about justice, quiet resilience, and the kind of change that reaches beyond one courtroom, one family, or one fence line. Every story we tell is about the people who keep standing when the room refuses to listen.